All right, hello Dunbar Heights, Pastor Wes here. I'm excited. I'm just like hours away tomorrow morning. My family and I will head out for a little bit of time away, which we're so looking forward to. But before we do that, I wanted to take just a few minutes to update everyone, just to kind of give everyone, keep you informed about what's going on in the life of our church in general, as well as just to give you two specific updates about some things to be praying about and thinking about as we move ahead. So if I could ask for just a few minutes of your time, I'd be so grateful for that. It probably goes without saying that we are going through an incredibly challenging period of time as a church, as is the entire world, but we're certainly not exempt from that. But I want you to know that right from day one, right from the time that this pandemic hit, our church board, our leadership board has continued to gather faithfully, socially distanced of course, and continue to just invest and look into ways, really just like every place where gathering people together is a part of what we do, trying to think outside of the box of how it is that we can continue to operate, how we can continue to serve and love and care for what we do here in this gathering, in the ministry as a church. And that's what we've just continued to do. Most of you will already be aware of a lot of the ways we've tried to do some of that with our online weekly prayer or worship night gatherings that we'd be putting on, whether that's through the Benevolent Fund Initiative, where we've just been working to try to help serve some of the financial needs of people who are affected both in our church and our community by this pandemic. And of course, we've just been working hard to weekly put out our scattered gathering services, our online services scattered together in a way that we trust is blessing you and that is continuing to cause you to grow in your faith despite the fact that we're not gathering here in this place. And as it relates to those online services in particular, that's the first kind of major update that I want to tell you about, and it has to do with letting you know about where we're at now as far as our reopening strategy, getting this building opening up again and moving towards in-person gatherings here in this space. Our staff and our leadership board have been working hard together to develop a plan and a strategy, as well as to set up this place in such a way that meets all the BC Health and Workplace BC guidelines for in-person worship gatherings, but really even along with that, just setting up something that we feel is going to just really protect the health and safety of our congregation above all. And we've just been working towards that plan, understanding really like the rest of our city that those plans are written in pencil because it would only take a second wave, another outbreak somewhere, and all those plans suddenly become irrelevant. But still, you got to have a plan. We got to have some plan that we're working towards with the hope that it will come about. And so that's what we're continuing to do. We're working forward in the hope that this plan will come about and we'll begin to do those in-person gatherings. So here's how this is going to work. To begin with, those of you who are regular attenders, new attenders, if you're someone who attends church gatherings in this space, in the next week or so, you are going to receive an online survey through an email that's going to help assess everyone's level of comfort with in-person gatherings. That's really the sole purpose of why we're sending that out. We understand people have different views about safety of in-person gathering. We're trying to respect all those things. And so what this survey is going to do is just help us understand where our congregation in particular is at as it relates to the safety and comfortability of doing that. We don't want to know what the stats say. We don't want to know that. We want to hear from you particularly. What's your level of comfort with gathering in this space? There's no right or wrong answer. We just want to know where you're at. As I mentioned in our last kind of church building reopening update a number of weeks ago, now that we've been expanding our bubble, some home groups trying to do some outside meetings and whatnot, the next stage of what we're working towards is a hybrid Sunday morning gathering. That's what we're working towards. It's going to include both in-person as well as online availability. We're trying to serve both of those needs at the same time. The survey that you receive is going to give you a brief outline of what that service, that kind of hybrid modified service will look like. But so you have something in your mind, the goal of what we're working towards and hoping to begin those hybrid services is October. That's what we're aiming for. We feel like that's going to give us enough time to set up this place properly and according to guidelines, as well as to watch what happens with school reopening and see how large gatherings of people works out. So that's going to give us a lot of good information. So that's what we're working towards. We're going to continue to give you updates as they become available, more information, but that's where things stand as regard to that update. The second update that I wanted to give you very quickly has to do with something that's really been on the table, as it were, for our board and for our church really for quite a while now, as it relates to staffing for our church, both to meet our current ministry needs as well as to facilitate what we hope is future growth for our church. Wanted to update you about what's going on with there. Most of you would be aware that Mayanne stepped down in January of this year from her role as Deacon of Youth and Young Adults. And you'd also be aware probably that we have been without a Deacon of Music and Media since January of 2019 when Les Nerling stepped down from that position. So we've been now in this position of holding and waiting and trying to see what that's going to look like. And so understanding those areas of need and seeing them is actually being really important. The update we wanted to give you is that our church board has decided, given the current makeup of our church, as well as planning for what we hope will be greater reach and impact into our surrounding community and into our city in the area of youth ministry in particular, we are recommending really moving forward towards hiring somebody who will serve in both of those areas of ministry. We believe that is the next right step for our church. We wanted to update you about that. Now, initially we had developed 2 separate part-time positions that would serve in each of those roles individually. Understanding that historically the music and media position was not a paid position, but wanting to move ahead with that, so we drew up job descriptions for that. But again, trying to think outside the box, trying to look at things differently, we began to become curious about the idea of whether or not a combined associate pastor position that served both of those areas of ministry wasn't just like a realistic way forward, but actually the right way forward. Instead of looking for 2 separate positions, to find one that could serve in both. And we do believe that's right. That's what we're wanting to move ahead with. We feel God's calling us ahead to. Now, for those of you that like details and want to kind of see the process, how do we get there? I'm going to be attaching all 3 of those job descriptions, kind of show our work as it were, so you can kind of see how those things developed into this full-time position. So you're going to get 2 part-time positions, the part-time music and media, part-time youth and young adults position, and then that full-time combined position. And you'll see kind of what our process was. As you'll see, if you look particularly at the full-time position of a combined role that we're wanting to move ahead, there's something of like a 70-30 split as it relates to job responsibilities, favoring the youth ministry responsibilities. That decision was based solely on what we understood as just that job requires more work, and so the responsibilities will lean in that way. It includes the reality of the fact that we just already have a large group of kids who are in that kind of preteen, teen age group, and that group is just steadily growing as our kids ministry continues to filter into youth and young adults role. So that's what was leading into that decision. But beyond that, I think one of the things driving that most of all was just recognizing that age group in particular, this preteen youth age group, is at such a vulnerable place with their new young faith and coming into pressures of junior high, high school, and so many things that are pulling them away from their young faith. We're wanting to really have someone who can really invest and press into developing and rooting their faith deeply, working with their families all together to help them work together as a team in order to root their faith deeply in this time that's so vulnerable for their young, impressionable faith and minds. And so those are things that are really guiding and leading why it was we felt that this is how the role, why it was so important, but why the levels of different responsibilities. Really, to invest in the congregation, the DHBC congregation of the present, and not look ahead to the DHBC congregation of the future, for us, we really just felt would just be a grave error in leadership, as well as in stewardship of this congregation, this church that God has given us to minister to and to care for as leaders. So we get it. Don't worry, we get it. We're in a pandemic right now. So of course, this is not exactly prime, ideal time to be hiring. It's a strange time to be hiring for sure. Not to mention the fact, like, whoever this person, if we potentially hire this person, they're going to have to be doing a lot of their own outside the box thinking as we transition from more of an online into an in-person gathering. How do they minister to youth? How do they do music? And they're going to have to do their own outside the box thinking. Absolutely. But there's a lot of things working in our favor right now. For instance, given our healthy financial position, which just God's grace there. It's given the fact that we have an availability of housing already with the UBC condo to house whoever this person might be as they step into that position we potentially hire, along with really just what we've identified as the great need. If we need this, if we're really saying that this is what God is calling us to in order to meet that area of need, all those things we think all considered together mean that it is still right, it is still a wise decision to move ahead with looking to hire this combined associate pastor position. So I wanted to update you that that's kind of our thinking where we're at right now. Now, absolutely, particularly from our membership, we just welcome and invite questions, comments, encouragement from you as to how that strikes you. Are you excited about that? Are you worried about that? Whatever it is, we want to hear from you as we move forward with that. Given the COVID-19 restrictions on gathering and so much limitation on us right now, we know that that's even going to affect the initiation of a hiring process. All those things are affected too, having a search committee and voting and doing all that stuff. That's going to require a lot of our flexibility and outside the box thinking as well. And yet we really believe if this is really what God is calling us to, if the Spirit is leading us in this way as we step out in faith and trust Him, He's going to deal with all those challenges and anything else that we may encounter as well. He's going to help it to work out. And if it's not His will, it won't anyway. So stepping forward in those ways, we're trusting that those things are going to work out too, and we're going to be able to move ahead as God leads us. And so we're just letting you know initially as we're thinking this way, giving you that update. Beyond anything else, whoever you are watching this right now, we just want to say above all, what we need most of all is your prayers. Whether we're talking about our reopening strategy, getting in-person gatherings going, whether it's this potential hire, we need your prayers so much for God's wisdom, for His insight and leading into the right way forward, the ways that are going to be safe and protect everyone, and that are just going to continue to move forward in a positive direction. That's what we're praying so much. So would you join us in that, because that really is the foundation of everything we hope to accomplish here at Dunbar Heights, prayer. So would you join us in prayer? That's the update I wanted to give to you right now. Thanks so much for your time in giving to this. And as I said, please be watching your email in the next week or so. We will be sending out that survey that's going to be assessing in-person gatherings and where people are at with that. So be watching for that. Thanks so much again. God bless, and we'll see you in a bit.